40 years ago, on January 12, 1986, STS-61-C took place. It was the 24th mission of NASA's Space Shuttle program and the 7th mission of Space Shuttle Columbia. It was the first time that Columbia, the first space-rated space shuttle orbiter to be constructed, had flown since STS-9. The mission launched from Florida's Kennedy Space Center on January 12, 1986, and landed 6 days later on January 18, 1986. STS-61-C was the last shuttle mission before the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, which occurred 10 days later after STS-61-C's landing. The astronauts consist of Commander Robert L. Gibson on his second space shuttle mission, pilot Charles Bolden on his first space shuttle mission, Mission Specialist 1 George Nelson on his second space shuttle mission, Mission Specialist 2 Flight Engineer Stephen Hawley on his second space shuttle mission, Mission Specialist 3 born in Costa Rica Franklin Chang Diaz on his first space shuttle mission. Diaz was the third Latin American and the first Latin American immigrant NASA astronaut selected to go into space. Payload Specialist 1 Bill Nelson on his first and last time in space during a space shuttle mission. Nelson became the second sitting member of Congress to fly in space after Senator Jake Garn. And Payload Specialist 2 Robert J. Senker on his first and last time in space during a space shuttle mission. 11 years later, in 1997, STS-81 took place, which was a Space Shuttle Atlantis mission to the Mir space station. The astronauts from that mission consist of Commander Michael A. Baker on his fourth and final space shuttle mission and final time in space, pilot Brent W. Jett Jr. on his second space shuttle mission, Mission Specialist 1 Peter Wissoff on his third space shuttle mission, Mission Specialist 2 Flight Engineer John M. Grunsfeld on his second space shuttle mission, and Mission Specialist 3 Marcia Ivins on her fourth space shuttle mission. Also, Mission Specialist 4 Jerry M. Lininger was on his second and final space shuttle launch, and John E. Blaha was on his way back to planet Earth from his fifth and final time in space during the mission's conclusion. And on January 12, 2011, the 2011 Lebanese protests were seen as influenced by the Arab Spring. The protests were largely centered on demands for political reform, particularly opposition to Lebanon's confessional political system. They began in early 2011 and gradually subsided by the end of the year. Separately, as part of the wider Arab Spring, tensions between Lebanese factions supporting and opposing Bashar al-Assad escalated into sectarian violence, reaching a peak between May and June 2012. Well, that's all I have for the events this morning. If you like what you listen to, don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe. This is Stephen Luke, and I'll see you next time for another history update.